So let's do a little off-the-cuff video about our new home server setup. Same place, the new GleanNet router. I actually didn't do a video about that, but let's talk about the old server first. The old server was rocking an AMD Phenom 2 X6 1045T. That's a 6-core, 6-thread CPU. It's pretty old. I think it's a decade plus at this point. It had integrated graphics. I didn't have a graphics card in it, but I was trying to use the integrated graphics to do some hardware transcoding for Plex and Jellyfin, and it was actually doing okay. But I had started to notice basically two main problems. The first one was that file transfers were not going as fast as they could have been. I think because we were doing software in Linux MD-Atom RAID 5 calculations and Lux full disk encryption calculations for every transfer, plus the encryption over SSH. I think that was a little much for that old CPU to handle, so the file transfers weren't going as fast as they could have went. It also hosts a Minecraft service, and I noticed that the Minecraft server, like whenever 2 or 3 people were playing and you would go into a new area and it would try to generate new terrain, it would kind of herp for a moment, like it was having a little bit of trouble keeping up. The USB ports on it were, I think, USB 1.0 or 2.0, and they were really slow. Most of the time it's not a big deal because backups to my external drives that are my offsite backups to that really only transfer the difference between last month and the current month. But there was once or twice, for example, when I added a drive to the offsite backup where it had to basically like resilver the RAID 0 array on those and then transfer all that data. That took like a week plus. And I also noticed that whenever it would do its monthly checks of the internal array, because Linux MD-Atom, at least as it ships from Debian by default, will do a monthly check of its internal RAID array to make sure that everything looks okay, that the data looks the way it's supposed to look. That was taking like 3 days, and during that 3-day period, read speeds on this were really slow. They were abysmal to the point that Plex was barely usable. And so I tried to put a faster USB card in it. Actually, this card right there, if you can see it, it's got 4 USB 3.0 ports. I think they're 3.1 or 2. And 3 USB-C ports back there. And when I put that in it, in the old server, it wouldn't even boot. Like, it would boot, and you would see the BIOS, but the drives just wouldn't appear. I think it literally just ran out of PCI Express lanes. So this is my old gaming desktop. I've had this motherboard and CPU and graphics card for 6 or 7 years now. I've played a lot of games on it. But honestly, my Steam Deck is powerful enough. It's not quite as powerful as this graphics card, but in terms of CPU, it actually crushes this thing. And it's powerful enough. It runs the games that I want to play just fine, and it's portable. And I hadn't really done any gaming on this in a while. So, what's different about this one? Well, that USB 3 card works in it. It has USB 3 ports on the built-in motherboard. It has built-in gigabit Ethernet, so I can save a PCI Express slot. See, the old one had 100 base T Ethernet, so it was only 100 megabits per second. So I had a PCI Express card in there to add a gigabit Ethernet port. This one's got it built in. So we've got an 8 gigabyte RX 480. We have 16 gigabytes of 1866 DDR3 RAM. We've got an AMD FX 8370 CPU, not overclocked because I just want it to stay stable. This is still a pretty old CPU by today's standards. Like, my laptop absolutely destroys the CPU if you're just doing a CPU transcode with Handbrake. But it also is a lot better than what was in the old server. So I think for what it's going to be doing, software RAID 5 calculations, encryption calculations, and things of that nature, it should be totally fine. I did a little disk test with my little a script that I wrote to write data to the RAID array and then read it back, and it was running at like 500 megabytes per second on reads and about 280 to 300, something like that, write speeds to this 4-disk RAID array. But we've got the RX 480, 60 gigabytes of RAM, AMD FX 8370. We have the same 4 Western Digital Gold 12 terabyte drives, like I said, in software RAID 5 with Lux encryption on top of them. This is actually 5 1/4 inch bay with an adapter in it. That's another good thing. The old server's case, even though it was kind of neat, especially if it was like a gaming rig, only had 2 dedicated 3.5-inch bays here. It did have a third one up top, but it was a little bit hard to get to because the CPU cooler is right up against it. But we've got 3 slots here, and we've got 3 5.25-inch bays up here that I can adapt down if I need more space. But I just did a clean install of Debian and just migrated all my stuff over. I've got an image of the old install stored on here, so I can always mount that and pull a config if I forgot something. And then, you know, we've got the same little Raspberry Pi 4 here running a Pi-hole ad blocker content filter for the kids and a WireGuard VPN server so that I can keep myself and the kids behind the Pi-hole even when we're not at home. We've got a GleanNet router here that is flipping awesome. I think it's called the Flint 2. Its range is unreal. Like, it travels a good 300 feet through this wall, through the outside wall, and another 300-ish feet down the driveway on the 5 gigahertz network. The range on this thing is unreal. It's ridiculous. And then we've got our UPS here. Obviously, if you have a server, you've got to have an UPS. I'm going to take and wipe the stickers off this side panel here. But that is our new server. Basically, I sold my old one to my brother because it's still fine for like a basic NAS or something. I think he said he's going to build his own homemade router out of it. So hopefully that works out for him. But after I get the stickers off, get a Debian sticker to put on here, this is our new server. It's my old gaming rig. This RX 480 is going to scream when it comes to hardware decoding and encoding, at least of X264 and I think X265 content, which is like 99% of what's on my Plex server. And that will free up the CPU to do other things like Minecraft and the RAID and encryption calculations without being bogged down so much by the other stuff going on. But yeah, hopefully this thing continues to serve me well for many more years to come. It did great as a gaming PC for a little while, and now I hope that it's going to continue to do great as our home server.